Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning back in today. So today I want to continue the series on the earnings blast concept that I introduced a couple of videos ago when I discussed Roblox. I actually did 2 videos on Roblox. If you haven't checked those out, please do. So the case in point today, the case company that we're going to go over is Oracle. So Oracle had a phenomenal quarterly earnings that they just reported today. And the stock is up 16%. And being that the stock is up 16%, as we somewhat know, since we've discussed options, at least on a surface level, is that the options do much better than the stock, right? So this video is going to really add a lot of value, I think, because you're going to see how a concept can turn into a viable strategy for potentially quitting your job, potentially living the life you want to live, and doing the things you want to do long term, which ties into the core theme of this channel, life enhancing financial coaching, right? So sit down and buckle yourselves in. It's going to be a fun ride here today as we go over this and you see the full potential of what this strategy can do for you. So Oracle, like I mentioned, the earnings came out today and were really good. And what I'm starting to think, because I introduced this just as a concept, but I'm really starting to become a believer that this is a viable strategy, like I mentioned. And I want to show you the call options for December 17th, which typically, only being a week away, I wouldn't recommend these. And I'm not recommending this because remember, this is not financial advice. This is just informative, educational, conceptual stuff, right? So the case in point, if you look at Oracle, Oracle has shot up. It's up $14 a share right now. It's fluctuating a bit, but the earnings blast that it saw today catapulted it over $100 a share. So picking the $100 December 17th call option here, actually it closed the day yesterday at 26 cents per contract. And right now it's down to $2.55 per contract, but it was up as high as up to $5 per contract. So if you see right here, well, this is showing 10 cents. This is almost a 2,500% gain in one day on what I call a predictable earnings blast. So if you look at 10 a.m., yeah, it opened. The tricky thing about this, you would have had to been in yesterday. So what you do to translate the concept into a viable strategy, you could go on any brokerage site like Ameritrade or E-Trade, download an earnings calendar of all the companies on the S&P 500 or whatever index you choose, the NASDAQ, and map out when they're going to report earnings. And you can pick the companies when the earnings come out and potentially find a cheap call option and potentially have a massive gain like this, 2,500% in one day. That's phenomenal. And if the companies typically exceed earnings, then that can become somewhat of a pattern, somewhat of a predictable event that you can execute on and do really well. And this can also be a very good strategy to combat inflation, which we know is rampant this year. And as we end the year, I'm planning to do a series of educational videos on different strategies to combat inflation, not just options trading, which can be risky, as I've shown, like in the Tesla video that I did. That was a really risky one, but you could have still profited if you executed it correctly. But this one, again, this is phenomenal. This Oracle call option for December 17th. But again, remember, you would want to get out of this quick because it's going to expire next week. If you were doing this in a hypothetical situation, right? So again, but by the end of the year, I'm hoping to start to get out some more videos, have a more defined schedule on videos, maybe try to do 2 a week instead of 1 because I've kind of slowed down. I'm going to do some strategies like I've talked about credit cards before, the credit card churning, different things you can do with like checking and savings accounts, different investment strategies. There's multiple ways to offset inflation. And I want my audience to have those tips and advice to be able to fight the rampant inflation we're seeing, like over 6% this year. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that kind of informal discussion there about Oracle. Again, one of many examples. And you would need to download the calendar of earnings, kind of map out like when companies are going to report their quarterly earnings, and you can look at the call options before if they're way down and you anticipate an earnings blast, then you can do really well, like you see here. So thanks for tuning in. Keep an eye out for my next videos. And if you haven't checked out my prior videos on options, I think I've got some pretty good scenarios that I've outlined. So please check that out. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend.